Hey guys, what's going on? Welcome back to my channel. For those who's new, my name is Christian and I love plants, and today is my 100th video on YouTube, which means I'm gonna go through my top 100 favorite plants I own right now. I'm just kidding. We're only going to go through my top 10 favorite houseplants. And this was already very difficult to do, to try and force rank them from, 1 to 10, because the reality is any of these guys can be my favorite plant right now. Last time I did my top 10 favorite houseplants was back in 2018. So I'm sure my answer back then will be completely different or somewhat different to what they will be right now. And partly because, through the years and through your plant journey, you're going to acquire new plants. You're going to establish more of a deeper relationship with some of them. And some you're just going to fall out of love with, or some you'll fall more in love with. So so we're going to go through my top 10 favorite houseplants. I'll also share with you guys how I generally care for them and let you guys know whether I think they're great for beginners, more for novice, or more for advanced. So without further ado, we'll get this top 10 favorite houseplants, starting at number 10 with the, tada, the Rhaphidophora tetrasparma. So this guy is a pretty cool plant, also known as the mini Monstera. And honestly, this is the fastest growing plant I have ever owned. I got this maybe a couple months ago, and in that time, it's grown literally from here all the way to here, and from here to all the way here. So this actually needs to be repotted soon and put on a moss bowl as well to try and get this guy to climb up. Very, very easy to care for. Honestly, this guy prefers medium to bright light. I have him in medium light and he's growing so fast. And I water this guy when he's completely dry. So definitely think this is a perfect beginner's houseplant, especially if you like to watch your plants grow and get excitement from that. You'll find a lot of joy in taking care of this plant because, like I said, relatively easy and such a fast grower. So this came in at number 10. And honestly, it could be easily number 1, because it is a beautiful plant. Very reminiscent of that Monstera deliciosa with its splits. And I think the mature leaves, as this gets older, it'll also have fenestration, which are those holes that you often see on Monstera deliciosas. But so coming in at number 9, it is the, tada, the Sansevieria Wilted. You guys know snake plants are one of the easiest houseplants to care for. They thrive in any lighting condition, low, medium, bright, and they require very little watering. I actually water this guy maybe once a month. And out of all the Sansevierias out there, this is my all-time favorite. In my previous video, I did my top 10 least favorite houseplants, and there was a snake plant there called the Trifasciata. And this is obviously my favorite out of all of them. I love the statement piece of this wide leaf look, and sometimes you can have it in single, or you can have multiple because it does shoot out a baby here. So I might have to split this guy soon, but this came in at number 9. Coming in at number 8, it is the, tada, the Neon Pothos. I know a few of you guys are out there thinking, why is a Pothos in your top 10 favorite houseplants? It's so basic. Well, let me tell you guys something. The only thing basic about a Pothos is its basic care needs. It's so easy to care for. They can thrive in any lighting condition. They obviously prefer a medium to bright light. I do water it when the soil is completely dry, and or when the leaves start looking droopy like this one right now. I definitely need to water this one, but they're beautiful trailing down on a bookshelf, or beautiful climbing up on a pole, or you can even get them, trailing against your wall, or even hanging off the ceiling. You can do so much with the Pothos, and they grow so fast. Honestly, it's such a beautiful plant. And out of all the Pothos, the neon one is my favorite because I do like Pothos. You guys know that. And like I said, they may look simple to a lot of people. They may look boring and basic, but something like this, just a color, simple statement. You don't need to be flashy. You don't need to be rare for it to be something beautiful and something that you really do admire. So so this came in as number 8 in terms of my top 10 favorite houseplants. Coming in at number 7, it is the, tada, the Anthurium claridarium. So as you guys know, this is one of my latest additions to the plant fam. It was part of my houseplant haul rare plant video I did a month ago. And I love anthuriums, and I got 2 of them, this one and the crystallinum. But I prefer this one better because of that green foliage with that light green vein and just a pattern on this heart-shaped leaf. So beautiful, so stunning. But these guys prefer a warm and climate environment, so I actually do got to keep my humidifiers running to try and give them that humidity level that they need. And I wouldn't recommend that these is exactly for beginners because, even their soil mixture is a little bit tricky. I got to actually repot this guy to something a little bit more airy because you don't want to risk overwatering these guys. So if the soil is a bit heavy and compact, I definitely want to make sure I repot this guy. And I do have already my mix. I'm going to use probably cocoa husk, some pumice, some orchid bark, and maybe a bit of potting soil. But so definitely a beautiful houseplant. Not easy to find, especially here in Canada. But if you do ever come across this and you do have that experience a bit, and you do your research and you increase your humidity level at home, then definitely this is a plant that is worth having. It's just beautiful, right? So my goal for this one is by the time we do another top 10 favorite houseplant, that this one will probably move up to maybe number 2 or number 1, depending how big I can get this one. But yeah, so coming in at number 5, it is the, tada, the Alocasia Silver Dragon. I mean, come on, check that foliage and that pattern out on its sleeve. It literally looks like a dragon scale, hence the name Silver Dragon. And honestly, it is a beautiful plant. It's an alocasia, and I know a few people out there struggle with alocasias in terms of caring for them. I find they do really well with a lot of bright indirect light. I have mine sitting here on the media unit, so it gets a ton of that bright south-facing light. And I water this guy when the soil is just about to go bone dry. I don't let it go dry out completely. Last time I did that, the leaves started to droop, even though they're quite forgiving when it comes to underwatering. So you do just want to be mindful that, you don't let them sit in dry soil for long periods of time. And yes, I would say this is a beginner to novice plant. If you have a south-facing window or east or west, I would say this will be fairly easy for you guys. And when it comes to the soil or the medium mix that I have him in, I have pretty much just regular potting mix, like maybe 50% of it, and then like 40% cacti soil, and then the rest perlite. And then I put a bit of sphagnum moss at the top as just a top dressing to kind of help create that humidity. But it doesn't really require that much humidity. It's done well for me without my humidifier on, but now that I do have my humidifier on, it obviously is looking a little bit better. But yeah, so this came in at number 5. So now coming in at number 4, it is the, tada, the Philodendron Melnickisom. So you guys recall, this is a beautiful plant that I was so in love with, and I am in love with, when I first got it as part of my houseplant haul rare plant video. And it's a philodendron. And for those of you guys who's been following my stories on Instagram, I've been having a bit of a problem with this one. Philodendrons for me are very, very tricky. They're very sensitive to water, so you don't want to overwater this guy. And I made a mistake of overwatering it because the soil medium it came in was a bit more packed, and it wasn't airy as it should have been. But in any event, I'm trying to revive it. It's already got a lot of like yellow leaves right now because this was probably from the shock of what happened last week when I overwatered this. So what I ended up doing is I removed it from the soil. It was obviously wet. Whenever you overwater a plant, there's a few things you can do if you do feel like you've overwatered it. One is to remove it from the pot and try and loosen that soil gently to try and let air pass through. So that's what I did with this one. I tried to remove as much of the wet soil as possible. Then I let it kind of sit there for a few hours to let the roots dry. And then if there were any dead roots, you can tell when there's a dead root when it's black, just trim them off. And then what I did is obviously created this new mix. I now have him in a lot of perlite, a lot of orchid bark, some charcoal, and a bit of moisture control potting mix. And that's the medium he's in right now. So I'm letting him chill here for a bit. I haven't watered this guy since last week, and I'm about to water him, but I'm going to water him with a bit of hydrogen peroxide and water, so about like a 20% hydrogen peroxide and 80% water to just make sure his root system is okay and there's no fungus that's sitting there that's going to start spreading, because very, very sensitive. So when it comes to this plant, I would say this is more for a novice to advanced. But some of you guys swear philodendrons do really easy for you guys, but I struggle with philodendrons. This one, my pink princess, my silver sword, just not doing so well, but I'm hopeful for this one. It's got a new leaf, so, and again, this is a plant I really, really love. Right now, it's a number 4 only because I'm obviously having a bit of a challenge with it right now, but I'm confident that if I can get this guy to thrive, and by next year, maybe he'll be number 1. All right, so coming in at number 4, it is the, tada, the Thai Constellation Monstera. So for those of you guys who's been following my journey for a while, you remember when I first got this plant a couple years ago. It was a tiny baby plant, and it grew pretty well. It was thriving. It was amazing. And then last summer, it got attacked by thrips. And for those of you guys who has ever experienced thrips, they are probably one of the worst houseplant pests you can ever experience. Very, very difficult to get rid of. So I did everything from insecticide soap to thrip spray, to ladybugs, to neem oil. And I think I was doing that for maybe a good solid 2 to 3 months. Eventually what happened is it damaged a lot of the new growth that was on this plant, and it stopped growing. It went dormant for a while. It was so much in shock. So I was very worried that it was never going to thrive again. But a couple months ago, it started to show a lot of new growth, and now it's got these beautiful new leaves on it. So really, really excited that it's now thriving again. And yeah, I guess it just needed time to obviously, settle down and get used to the new soil and just get to the environment and really just calm down after all that treatment, because it was a lot for that plant to go through. I gotta admit, because it did not look healthy, and I was so sad about it. But really happy that he's thriving again, and I'm excited to see how he's going to look by next year. When it comes to caring for Monsteras, they do prefer a lot of bright indirect light. I have a south-facing window. They'll do fine in south, east, or west. I don't recommend if you have a north-facing window. You know, they prefer a lot of bright light. And I water this guy when the soil is completely dry. I have the soil medium to be about like regular potting mix, cacti soil, and then a perlite as well. So that 50-50 and then a handful of perlite. And making sure that when I water this guy, I allow it to drain through and not sitting in wet soil. But yeah, so coming in at number 3, I guess we're now going to go through my top 3 favorite houseplants. And man, this was really hard because any of these 3 can be one, you know. So, and I'm sure you guys can take a guess on what these 3 plants are. They've been with me for a while, you know, a good almost 2 years for most of them. And yeah, they're just great. Coming in at number 3, it is the tada! You guys have seen this one for some time now. It is my Helia, or I call it Helia Pepperoni. And man, this guy is a beauty. Just over 2.5 years now since I've been growing this one. And originally as a tiny little pup, but in the course of that time has obviously grown into this beast. So massive. He's got tons of babies at the bottom there. So for those of you guys asking how he looks so full at the bottom, he's got actually all these babies that I left there to try. And you know, because I like this look. I like that they can thrive together as a family. But this main stem right there, you know, you guys can see it's a bit bare, but it still has a lot of leaves at the top here, from the mid all the way to the top. And I have this guy obviously close to my south-facing window right there in the corner. And I water this guy when the soil is completely dry using filtered water. I don't use tap water because I find that they damage the leaves. It creates a lot of those pores on the leaves. One of the common questions I get about this plant is why are some leaves curling in or some curling out, and why can't they be flat? Honestly, I don't know that answer, and if you guys do, comment below, but I don't really think it matters as long as your plant is healthy and showing new signs of growth. For me, I don't mind whether they're curling in or curling out. I think it gives a lot of character to the plant, so I don't get really worried or stressed out about that. Honestly, as long as this guy is giving me a lot of new growth, and you know, especially at the top there, you guys can see that this does continuously grow. It is a fast grower in my opinion. You give enough lighting to this one, it is a fast grower, and just be conscious that you don't overwater this, so making sure that water drains through. But yeah, I would say this is like a beginner's houseplant. You know, I definitely do, because you know, they do well in obviously south. I have mine east or west, but I've also seen some do well in north-facing window, so they can thrive in any type of direction when it comes to the light. Like I said, just water when the soil is dry and use filtered water. But yeah, coming in at number 2, it is the tada, my string apart. So you guys are familiar with this plant. I've done a lot of videos on how to care for it and how to propagate it, so definitely check that out if you're looking for something a little bit more in detail. One of the common questions I often get about this one is how do you maintain that untangled look? And my answer to that is when I first got this one, I spent like almost 2 hours trying to untangle him because I knew I wanted this, like, you know, curtain type of look that's clean and neat. And the ends do still get tangled as it grows because obviously they tend to like curl and grab onto each other. So I'll still spend time untangling that just to make sure it doesn't get out of hand. And another common question I get is how do you get the top looking full? So I don't know if you guys can see right here, but you guys can see right there that if you have tubers on your string of hearts sitting at the top of the soil, eventually there's going to be new vines that will shoot out of that, which is what it's doing right now, you know, now that we're in the growing season. And that's how this plant can actually look full. You can also obviously take some cuttings, propagate it, root it in water, and gently, you know, plant it back at the top, which I've done a few times before as well. But yeah, in terms of caring for this one, a lot of bright indirect light, again, right here. So about 10 feet away from my window, water when the soil is completely dry. And honestly, I think this is fairly easy to novice type of plant, especially if you have like an east, south, or west facing window. North facing window, you might find it a bit challenging. You just got to be mindful of not overwatering this plant because, you know, they can obviously, you know, die from overwatering, just naturally root rot, any plant does. So if you have a north facing window, you got to pay attention to that soil, making sure that it's completely dry before you water this guy. And but yeah, so that is number 2. I know some of you guys probably thought this was number 1. I think this was my number 1 plant last time? I don't know. We'll have to find out. Let's look back at the ZZ plant, Pothos, so the prayer plant, the Helia Pepperoni, the Sansevieria Wilted, the spider plants, the rubber plants, the string of hearts, the Monstera, the bird of paradise. All right, so coming in at number 1, it is the, tada, the Ficus senecio. So this guy is so huge and so massive now. I've had him for almost 2 years. Around the same time I got the string of hearts, and it's been so good to me. You guys know why I love this plant. I mean, look at that foliage. Look at the pattern on this guy. It literally looks like art. I featured him so many times. Again, I've also done how to care, how to propagate your Ficus elasticas. Out of all my Ficus elasticas, I like all of them. I have a ruby, I have a burgundy, but this one obviously is my favorite. And man, it is so massive right now. And look, just the size of this leaf. Literally is going to be the size of my hand here. Like, look at that. So it's about this tall, and I think eventually I want to go maybe taller than me. Once it's probably this height, I think what I'm gonna do is cut the top and then try and get this guy's branch out and make it look more into like a tree, but fairly easy for me to care for. Again, they get a lot of bright south-facing light, like really close to the window, even a couple hours of direct sunlight. I water when the soil is really dry. My soil medium on this one right now is, again, cacti soil, regular potting mix, and a bit of perlite. And yeah, it's done well for me. A lot of questions I get about this one is, you know, a lot of browning, a lot of black leaves. And usually browning is either a sign of, usually it's a sign of overwatering. So you're probably overwatering, and it's probably getting a lot of like cold draft or like, you know, forced air blowing onto it. You want to make sure there's no forced air blowing onto this really, really close. You know, obviously good air circulation is good for plants, but if you have this in an area that's getting a lot of like wind or air, and on top of that, you're overwatering, it's not going to do well. They prefer south, east, or west. South for sure. If you have a north-facing window, I don't recommend this plant, but I would say this is a fairly easy and resilient plant. Also, I've never experienced any pests with my Ficus elastica. Like, it's pretty like hardy when it comes to that stuff. But yeah, there you guys have it. Those are my top 10 favorite houseplants right now. Comment below and let me know if you guys were surprised at any of the plants I have selected. Also, let me know what your top 10 favorite houseplants are. Other than that, hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. Stay safe, and we'll see you in the next one. Peace.